In this video series, we'll show you some of the power of the Enterprise Vault DTrace utility. In this video, we'll show you some of the more advanced operations that can be performed with DTrace. If you remember from the previous videos, there may be a few reasons why we are running DTrace, such as wanting to check performance of our server or throughput of a particular aspect of it. More likely it's because we're troubleshooting a particular issue, or we've been instructed to do so by Symantec support. Two of the biggest issues when running DTrace are that the files can be quite large, and the amount of information logged for seemingly simple processes make finding an issue in the file quite hard. There are many false positives where errors reported in the file are quite normal. Running DTrace through the VAC is relatively easy, but running DTrace from the command line gives you more flexibility. There are two more advanced features that we can make use of with DTrace. These are called filters and triggers. It's easy to use these via the command line and build up the required entries. They can then be incorporated into templates, which can be used from the Vault admin console, though it's more usual, I think, to see them being run from the command prompt. I'll show you how to create your own templates in a later video. Remember, the purpose of filters and triggers is to try to limit what's being logged and help get to the bottom of the problem you're trying to troubleshoot. Filters allow us to record only specific matching or non-matching lines. They're cumulative and they can become quite complicated. Because of this, they're often difficult to get right, and you may end up recording information that you don't want to see, and likewise, you might miss information that you do want to see. Triggers have the ability to start logging when a particular line of trace occurs. Tracing after that is normal, and tracing before that doesn't get logged. A question that's often asked is, how do I know how to set up these filters and triggers, and what to filter and trigger on? Well, unfortunately, these only come from experience, and this is why you must rely on other consultants and Symantec support to gain a better understanding. Over time, you'll become an expert. Let's see filters and triggers in action now. Here I've launched DTrace from a command prompt. You start the process of adding a filter by typing filter. This takes you to the filter subcommand. Typing help lists the commands that are then available. The first thing to do is clear both, which clears the current filters. Now let's add a filter for is eligible for archive by typing + followed by is eligible for archive. The subcommand will return a message to indicate that it's added it to the filter. Now we can add more here if we wish, and we can see what's currently being filtered by typing view. When we're done, we type exit to go out of the subcommand back to DTrace. Now we add tracing for the components we want to view. If you're not sure, then you can type view to get the full list, but this often scrolls off the top of the screen, so check down and up a little bit for the process you want to add. Remember as well that this list will be different on a server running, for example, the FSA placeholder service. And also remember that this list is not in alphabetical order. In our case now, let's turn on login for the archive task. And let's log that out to a file. Now we run the archiving task against our specific user. And we wait a few minutes for that to run. When it's finished running, we can go back to the DTrace window and type log to turn off login, and then O, which is short for open, and then the number of a file, for example 1. This is our filtered DTrace. Notice at the top of the trace we can see that the filter was added. and in the trace itself you can only see lines containing the string that we wanted to filter on. Adding a filter like this is great if you want to determine why certain messages haven't been archived when you expect them to have been. Take for example this first message. It's not been archived because it's not been sent. This would lead us down the road of looking at the archiving policy to see if draft items are included or not. Now let's launch DTrace from a command prompt and set up a trigger. You start the process of adding a trigger by typing trigger. You can get help by typing help as we see here, and you can see what is currently set as a trigger by typing view. The subcommand is very similar to the filtering one we just looked at. Let's add a filter by typing plus C storage archive : create. This will start the full regular tracing once DTrace gets to this particular line of trace. Now for trigger monitoring, we do the watch command. We are asked how many snapshots we want to include in the trace file. Think of this as the number of occurrences of the particular line we want to find. We specify a log file name and have the option of how many lines of trace to display after the trigger has been hit. And we say yes to apply the display filter. Now we turn on a component for tracing. And now we run the archiving task for our test user. As you can see now on the screen, DTrace tells us each time the trigger has been reached. Once the number of occurrences has reached what we specified in the trigger options just now, tracing stops. Now let's look at the file we just created. In the file we can see a lot of additional tracing has been captured, and we can see the trigger that we set up. This number here tells us the line of the trace that matched, so we can search for that and jump down to the particular bit of the file. We can then also search for trigger filter match to jump to the next instance of the trigger firing, and so on. So in summary, we have seen that the DTrace utility can be run from the Vault admin console or from a command prompt. Running it via the command prompt means we can do some more advanced things like filtering and use triggers. I hope that showing you how to run DTrace in Enterprise Vault 10 proves useful to you. Thank you. Goodbye.